Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to our first edition of the TTG Conversations webinar. This afternoon, we will have our session on the end of events as we know it. I know it's a very dramatic title, but we will have some learning points here, yeah? So we'll be taking this short hour to discuss if the pandemic is heralding the end of events as we know it. And we have 4 panelists with us today. Please meet Iain. Iain Bitran is the Executive Director of the International Society for Professional Innovation Management, and that's Iain. And we have Veemal Gungadin, CEO of Global Sign In. And then we have Joe Ciliberto, the Global Director, Sales and Marketing of EventsAIR. And finally, we have Cheryl Tan, who's the Head of Events, TTG Events, a business unit of TTG Asia Media. So Cheryl and I are calling in from, and Veemal as well, we're calling in from Singapore. Joe is joining us from Brisbane, and Iain is from Manchester in the UK, where it is very early still. So before we begin, I've got a poll that I would like all of you to respond to. It will flash now very quickly on screen, and you can put your answers in, and then we will have a look at the results in a minute. Lynette, can we get the poll going? Okay, great. So now you put your answers in, and meanwhile, I'll dive into the panel discussion, yeah? So the first question is for Iain. Now, it's clear to see that many of the physical events have been forced into silence by the pandemic, and increasingly, organizers have had to consider moving their physical events online. So I know that, Iain, you have a innovation conference that was supposed to happen in June in Berlin, and you have chosen to now move it onto virtual platform. Can you tell us what motivated you to make that move?
Sure, and good morning. Well, for us, it was a little bit of a no-brainer. We had run an event in Bangkok in March, beginning of March, when a lot of this was happening, and we already made some contingency plans then to, what if things escalated in Europe? What would we do? And things did escalate pretty rapidly. So we felt that there were 2 main reasons why we took our event online. One was, financially, we're a not-for-profit association. We need to be able to survive into next year. So, on one hand, we needed to bring some income in, and we also needed to look after our presenters and our sponsors for our current event, which we've pushed back to next year. So we also felt a huge sense of responsibility to our community. People that have written papers, that have put together presentations that are relevant now. We felt that we needed to put on an event for them. In addition, we changed the title of our conference to reflect the pandemic. So we've called it "Innovating in Times of Crisis," and sort of put out another call for submissions. And received, I think it was 55 separate submissions that are specifically talking about how to innovate our way out of this crisis. So we're very quickly able to switch the event from a physical event to a virtual event and make it relevant to the crisis, to the current crisis.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I know that Global Sign-In and EventsAIR are the tech specialists in the meetings and events industry. So this widespread restrictions on events and gatherings must have brought some busy days for both of you, and we have discussed that during our own dry run. What sort of requests are you seeing a lot these days, and how is that changing the way you tailor your products and services? We can start with Veemal.
Sure, thanks. Well, good afternoon, everybody. We've been, like what you've said, we've been pretty busy lately, right? So we are, end of the day, a product company, but lately we've been having to, when dealing with customers, when dealing with requests, what we've been seeing is we've been getting requests more in terms of how to do this, how to do that. And the how, has basically transformed a little bit of the stuff that we're doing with regards to giving advice, with giving consultancy to our clients. So it all starts with, for example, what tools to use. The next thing is, right now, in most of the countries around the world, the only way to run an event right now is just digital, right? We call it virtual, digital, online. That's the only way to run an event. That's why we're probably here also today, right? And then the next thing is what do you do like with regards to video, for example? So in the industry, there are already like lots of experts to do with video production, and they have the relevant hardware to mix the audio, the videos, and all that. But right now, it's a whole new breed of technologies that we need to start with, and a whole new breed of capabilities that we need. So we find ourselves like doing what I'd like to term as a digital event manager job, right? So where it's really about like giving advice to our customers how to piece things together with regards to like what I mentioned, video. And then there are lots of things that are still very much the same with regards to running an online event, and that's to do with your registration. But now, how do you ensure, like for example, the platform itself is secure, that you don't have things that we've been hearing in the news like Zoom bombing and stuff. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay. And how about you, Joe?
Yeah, definitely. So good afternoon, good morning. So EventsAIR really has been around in the event management space for many years now. And I suppose the good news is, out of all of this, a lot of what's transpired is online. So things like Veemal was saying, registration, but also things like event websites, attendee apps, are things that are online already. So it's a matter of what we've been doing, and the call for virtual meetings or hybrid meetings is to really look at a delivery mechanism to actually be able to put all these things together. And that's what we've been working on, is the framework for that delivery system that sits on top of on our platform. So the benefit that we could see with that is that a lot of customers that already have our platform can just sort of add this module on top and run virtual events. So bringing in streaming, for example, or bringing in a go-to webinar or running functions, etc. So for us, it's been a very busy couple of months, well, 43 days and counting, to develop this framework, which we're launching next week. So yeah, a lot of learning, especially on the video side and the production side as well from our end.
Oh, that's the result for the first poll. So, okay, that's good. 55% of audience are loving the idea of running a virtual event. That's motivating. Okay. I would like to know from Joe and from Veemal as well. Have you seen a need to really expedite your product innovations as a result of the pandemic? Perhaps you were already thinking of doing something before this happened, but this is really pushing things for you guys to move a lot faster.
Well, if I may start, on our side, like we've been pretty busy, I would say, for the past few weeks or months. So yes, there were lots of ideas that we've had in the past in our product roadmap and all that. And the current situation, like, is just as such where we're having to expedite in releasing quite a bit of the stuffs that we are doing. Like, for example, to start with simple things like, for example, integration of live streaming platforms, right? Because there's a need today, like, for example, people log into a platform. When you go to an event, you probably have an event app, and then you go to an exhibition booth or you go to different sessions. So you're probably using different things. But right now, it's like the only place you can really be is on your laptop, on your desktop, on your phone, right? At home, remotely. So there's that big need of what we call like single sign-on. Like as an attendee, I need to be able to come into that place because now your laptop is really the venue, right? The venue of the event. And once you're there, where do you go to? Is there any breakout sessions? So it needs to be seamless. It needs to, people need to be able to know how to do it. If there's a live Q&A, no more scanning a QR code or pick up your mobile phone and then do it. It's like, it has to be all integrated, right? And I think like we're being compelled, at least on our side, and I think that's the challenge that everybody else is facing today. And we have lots of different players also building towards that. How do you ensure a great attendee experience online? And I think we're all on that path of discovery right now. because an online event like should not, and I think lots of people are getting it right now, should not just be like replicating what was in the physical world and then bringing that online, but rather there's a whole new thought process. There's a whole new medium itself online. So yeah, we're having the right platform to enable that. So at least on our side, that's what we've been working on, I would say. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And Joe, you're also busy with the trial runs of some of the new things that's going to come up. Very exciting. Yeah.
Very much so. Over the last couple of weeks, we're actually launching a new product called On Air next week. And part of that trial period has actually been testing the platform for large numbers. One of the challenges with a product like an on-air event environment, to test it properly, you want to have hundreds or thousands of people doing all different things, whether it be video streaming, networking groups, visiting exhibitors, or doing all these functions. To get a good test, you need to sort of have lots of people to do that. So we were quite fortunate. We sent the message out to our users who sort of came in droves, which was fantastic. So we had over sort of 2,000 attendees on our test site, and they gave us a lot of feedback, which was excellent, which is sort of the way our platform has evolved as well. So it allows us to really have a product that adds value to that whole event experience. So we're really excited about that. Yeah.
Okay, good. So for the audience, if you're interested to know more about what EventsAIR and Global Sign-In is able to help do for your virtual events, you can go to the handout section on this app, if you call that, and you can download the documents. Yeah. Okay. So let's go into the debate now. You know, there's a lot of debate around whether or not online and virtual meetings will be here to stay for a long time to come. Now that many event organizers and event owners are getting a hang of this, let's talk about whether or not virtual events are really going to herald the end of events as we know it. So let's jump in. Cheryl, maybe you would like to go first?
Hey, thanks, Karen, and hello to everybody. Yeah, so I think that's a really great question. So, and that's a question on everyone's minds. So for me, at least I think physical events are definitely here to stay. That personal, that face-to-face interaction cannot be replaced. And I think many people in the industry have already said so themselves.
Oh, Cheryl has a.
Can you hear me?
Audio? Yes, I can hear you now. Okay.
Is it okay?
Can you repeat? Yeah, can you repeat yourself? You said many
from the
people in
beginning?
the industry. No, it's okay.
Okay, so many people in the industry have also agreed with that sentiment that physical events are definitely going to be here to stay. But one thing that it's going to arise from this situation is that organizers and delegates are going to be increasingly comfortable and knowledgeable about using virtual platforms and tools. And this will eventually make it more compelling for organizers like ourselves to further digitalize the ways that the event will take place in order for it to be more effective and efficient to the whole overall event experience. So from the organizer's perspective, we're also discovering how virtual elements or hybrid arrangements can solve challenges that we typically face at physical events, even value add to that physical experience, and even create new ideas. So one example is attendance and hosting with capacity limits. So with that, virtual component or hybrid options, delegates who may not have been able to travel before, like in such situations with restrictions or with limited time schedules, they can still participate at the events remotely. So I think this is something that future events will be putting into consideration in their planning going forward. Yeah.
Okay. Iain, we met early in February in Singapore before the restrictions all started, and we had a conversation about will ISPIM ever consider going virtual? And you had your own concerns at that point about virtual event limitations. Now that you have to get on the virtual bandwagon, what are your thoughts? Has your mind changed since then?
Yeah, it seems like such a long time since we had a coffee in Singapore. Looking forward to having our next one. Yeah, because real coffee tastes good and virtual coffee doesn't taste quite so good. So yeah, I mean, I hold my hands up. I mean, I was pretty against doing anything virtually prior to this this pandemic, and the reason for that really was just it was an additional thing to have to worry about, and you know, I was always concerned about things like you know, the being able to do live streaming from, you know, from a hotel and having to rely on hotel Wi-Fi, but you know, there's definitely ways around that. I think what struck me now is that people seem to be much more comfortable. Mainly, I don't know whether it's because of necessity, probably they have to be, but people seem to be much more comfortable doing things virtually. And I was actually thinking about our future events and, you know, what we're learning now, and we're all going through a massive learning curve. I think this is going to set us in good stead for the future as well. And everything we learn now, we will use in the future. So I was thinking that for future events, why not have a virtual element? One of the things that we were concerned about was how do you price a virtual event? And you know, because a lot of people have said to us, oh, well, it should be free because it's online. Well, actually, it's probably more work to put on a virtual event than it is to do a physical event, mainly because we're having to learn so much ourselves. Yeah, and I don't work for free. I've still got kids to feed and stuff. So, so we've still have to have that element. But one of the things with our pricing is we thought, well, you know, there are people in parts of the world that you know, won't be awake when we're running our events, and the fact that we're going to record a lot of it means that, you know, why can't we have a price where people can come in and watch our recorded events? Another thing is that you know, I hold my hands up as well. We're as guilty as perhaps many other associations in that with us running physical events, we haven't thought too much about people who perhaps can't attend our events. So, for example, people in developing countries who simply cannot afford to come to our events. Why not make elements of our event, of our future events, you know, virtual, so that people can come in from developing countries and pay to at least gain some you know, see some of the content from the event and benefit from that. So there are definitely ways in which we can look to the future and take this experience and make sure that we do have virtual elements for our future events.
Right. Okay. Veemal.
Yeah, I think we're, well, the thing is, I come from a tech background. I run a tech company, but I can tell you, like, I have firm conviction that like physical event ain't going away, right? So nothing beats face-to-face. I don't think that's gonna change, right? And I think the conclusion we're probably all in our own minds probably gearing towards is that the future is probably what we call hybrid, right? So physical events will have a virtual component to it, an online component to it. Now, having said that, if you look at the current timing, right, it's actually very special. If you look at it right now, for the first time ever, the whole world is being forced out of necessity, like to adapt to the current situation. Like people, like for example, Iain, who 1 month ago didn't really believe in virtual event, he's being trained. But I'm just using Iain as an example here. Like there's so many other people, right? Like today, like everybody in this group has installed, for example, GoToMeeting software. So people have installed Zoom. Everybody's getting used to that. Speakers are getting used to having the equipment to make it happen. Like for example, right now I'm looking at myself. There's a bit of lighting problem here, right? So people are learning these kind of stuffs, and how do you do it better the next time? If you look at the quality of what we call the virtual events that has been happening, let's say even a month ago, compared to a few weeks ago, and what will happen 1 month ago, the quality is just going to get better and better and better, right? And I think maybe this is an opportunity, right? Attending an event. When I mentioned earlier, like for example, we need to rethink what a virtual event is, what a digital event is. Like it could end up being just like consuming media. Events could end up becoming media, like watching television, right? In this case, when I'm having a break, how do I get entertained? during the event, right? So that's what sports events have been doing all the while, right? And then during the breaks, you've got like really good commercials happening, and you want to watch these commercials because they're really that good, right? And maybe this is the opportunity for it to happen here, right? Where then events online is really about the content itself. With physical events, of course, we put a lot of emphasis these days, especially on the experience, the food, on the venue, on everything that's around the physical organization of the event itself. Online, you've got only one thing, right? And that's really the content. If the content is bad, that's it, right? And then the next challenge, I think, which we have, and probably the next opportunity, is like, how do you then monetize digital events? And I think that's the question on everybody's mind. Everybody is trying to crack that, right? Because if you look at today, the whole concept of digital events, online events, there's lots of great content, frankly speaking, happening out there, but it's all free, right? Everybody is giving out all the content for free, right? But I think it's just like what internet used to be, like people didn't want to pay email, but today you do pay to Microsoft, you do pay to Google to get access to your 1 terabyte of email and whatnot, right? I think we are today going through that whole global training program. We are all being trained right now from a speaker's perspective, from an attendee's perspective, to understand and to discover what is it to really mean to have a digital event. And we're all learning that, right? And it's going to just get better and better and better. And I think rather than comparing physical events to online events, we are probably at the cusp of something new. And I would put that more in the category of media more than anything else. Yeah.
Okay, I'm seeing some questions coming up about audience engagement during a virtual event. We were supposed to discuss that later on in the panel, but you know, the point that Veemal mentioned about how virtual events will now have to be kind of like the sports shows. In between, you have to have some kind of high level engagement. And I know, Iain, you're planning something that's unusual for your virtual conference is coming up. Would you like to tell the audience very quickly about that?
So for us, yeah, I mean, we're going to have, we're thinking about social events actually. And so we're going to have sort of a concert on the Saturday before our event starts, where we've got, we have a band that what we use from Portugal, we have another one from Germany. We have our delegates form their own band as well. So we're going to have a bit of a you know, ISPIM live concert on the Saturday. Then also, we're also bringing in a DJ live from Penang on the Sunday evening. One of our keynote speakers in Bangkok, her husband is a professional DJ. So he's going to come in, he's got a whole studio set up, and we've been doing some tests already. It's going to work really well. And we're going to get everybody on camera. People are going to bring a cocktail or a mocktail and you know, just be able to chat with each other. You know, if we can't have face-to-face, you know, physical face-to-face, let's have virtual face-to-face. Let's get some friendly faces up. Let's get people up and dancing and, you know, just having some fun. We can do that. You know, this is, you know, through technology, we can do that. And I think one of the elements I would say about, you know, the challenges about doing a virtual event is, yes, I think it's, you know, technically it's feasible to almost do everything we could do in a physical event, except for some of the engagement things. And we have to think a little bit differently. You know, how do we bring some fun elements into the conference? Because we don't just all want to be sitting there listening to presentations or, you know, perhaps taking part in a Q&A session. We don't want to be doing that for hours and hours on end. You know, we want to be able to have some kind of social elements as well. You know, I think somebody mentioned before about having an app, and you know, we're also thinking about how do we how do people actually engage with our conference? And we're trying to get them to be as natural as possible. So if they've got an app that they would normally use during a conference, we'll use that as well. We'll have some gamification elements of our app as well, just to keep people engaged in the way that we would do during a physical event as well. So, I think, there's a lot of people are trying to get up to speed really quickly on the technology and how to actually run a virtual event. But let's not forget some of the social engagement, some of the fun elements as well. And we think that's really important.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, Joe, you have an idea of how virtual events applications will differ across the different phases of time. So in the short term, the usage may be different from the midterm and the long term.
Yeah, definitely. So as Veemal said, necessity is the mother of all, requirements. And we're in a stage in the market right now where the necessity is to have virtual events. And really the way we've looked at the whole picture is looking at ways that events currently run, but also ways that you could monetize those events as well to remain sustainable in the short term. So the idea of monetizing, so how would you monetize a normal event? You might have exhibitors, you might have sponsors, you might have guest speakers that you could pay for. So the idea would be is how do you transfer that to a virtual event in the short term? So you need the framework to be able to do that to start with. Moving to sort of midterm, hybrid events, which Veemal covered as well, is where you've got a blended approach. As some of the borders open, so for example, if Australia starts easing off some of its restrictions and starts bringing sort of larger groups together, that might mean still that international guests might not be able to attend. So there'll be a necessity again to have hybrid events. And then eventually when we get back to normal, I think people will be trained to use this virtual tool as a way to sort of add value to live events as well. So it definitely has a roadmap over the next sort of 6 to 12 months as being an important part of how we sustain in an event industry as well. The ability to monetize is definitely a big question on a lot of our event organizers' mind. But if the content's good, if they're able to do business online, so if you think about one-to-one engagement with exhibitors and they're selling and doing business in a way that they can do that easily, that's a bonus. If there's sponsors that can add advertising to the interface, for example, or the sessions, other ideas is being able to actually get sponsors to facilitate group functions. So there's a lot of great ideas coming through on a business perspective on, at the end of the day, you want your event to have an ROI, whether it's good engagement or whether it's a financial one, there needs to be some sustainability there, because I totally agree, it shouldn't all be for free.
That's right.
Of course.
Okay, before we go on to the next question, I've got a second poll coming up right now, and our good event support is going to, okay, great, it's up there. So take your time to put in your response, and then I'll move on to our next question. Iain, can we talk about the difficulties your team is facing in doing the conversion to virtual?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's, none of us had really used, we're going to be using Zoom for our events, and none of us had really used Zoom very much other than for sort of internal meetings. And, we never switched our cams on or anything like that. But I think that you definitely need to think about how things are going to work in practice. So, we're looking at doing a conference with 10 parallel sessions, and for every parallel session, we're going to have a moderator and speakers. And I think, unlike a physical event, where maybe we have one technician to cover all 10 rooms because we know that projectors and laptops all work. What we're doing as well now for this event is we're making sure we've got one moderator and one technical person running every single session. So in the same way that you're doing this now, because I think if you're moderating a session, you've got to concentrate on the speakers, you've got to concentrate on the content of the session, but there's technical stuff that's going to be going on as well, you know, switching between cameras, switching people on and off, you know, taking Q&A and that type of stuff as well. So we've got to train up a whole bunch of people to do that. But not only do we have to train up our own people, we've also got to train people who are doing the presentations. We're a scientific-based conference, so we're likely to have between 250 and 280 separate presenters. And they will all have, as in the physical world, different skill sets when it comes to presenting. So one of the things that we're going to do is taking, you know, again, we're learning as we go along, and I learned a lot from our dry run last week. We're going to do exactly the same for our own conference. We're going to do a dry run exactly the week before, and everybody will come in, make sure that their equipment works, make sure that they're able to present. They will meet their facilitator, they will meet their tech. You know, we will make sure that we can practice as much as possible, because I think that currently that's you know, because we've got to get people up to speed really quickly. That's the way to go. Interestingly, I was in discussion with a university yesterday, because despite the fact that I'm going to get two of my children to oh, I only have two children, but both my kids to help out with tech.
Last time you checked.
Yeah, they're going to help out as tech, so we've got a few, you know, we've got a few other people who are going to do that as well. I was in touch with a university yesterday, and they do an event management course, and to see if they want to come and help. I met some of them at the ICA Congress last year in Houston, and they're keen to get involved too. So I think that you know, we've got a lot of willing volunteers to come and help, and it's very important that we make sure that you know, every session can run really well with a good facilitator and a good technical person, and that's difficult to put together. I mean, when we're looking to train people, when we're still being trained ourselves, you know, I think Veemal was talking about you know, we're all in sort of training mode. You know, at some point we've got to get that over to get that across to people who are helping us as well, and to the presenters, because there's an awful lot going to be taking place, and we know that things will go wrong. You know, Cheryl's microphone went down. You know, what do we do if that happens? But it happens for a longer period of time. What sort of backups do we have in place as well? And there's lots of things that we've got to think through that that we haven't had to do before, because a physical event, you know, we've been doing this for 20 years or so, and I guess we think we know we're pretty good at that, but on the virtual event we're still learning.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, Cheryl, you are also moving we discussed quickly just now. Oh, that's a result. That's good. 58% feel that the hybrid event format will help boost event revenue. Thank you, Lynette, for this. Thank you. So yeah, I was saying, Cheryl, you're moving your China shows online. Would you tell us some of the considerations you had to bear in mind when making that transition?
Hi, my mic's working this time, I hope.
Yes,
Can you hear me well? Okay, perfect. I just had to check. Okay, so yes, so last week we ITCM China and CEW China announced that we were going to go virtual at our deferred dates of 3rd to 5th August. So this was moved originally from a March date to an August date. We had hopes that, you know, the physical event was still going to take place, but you know, as of the recent last few weeks, it was quite clear that, you know, things were still there are a lot of uncertainty still in the marketplace, and it was quite inevitable that we had to move the event virtual. So very quickly, the whole team really had to gear up from ground zero. In the matter of weeks, everyone, Joe, Veemal, Iain, we were talking about learning. So that's definitely something we've been doing non-stop. I think we've never learned so much. I can't remember if I learned as much in school, but definitely so much learning. Peer sharing, we had to split, you know, it's like working back when you were doing projects in school. Everyone's to take a different area, do your research, come back together, regroup. So there's a lot of time, incredible amount of time that we spend on research and planning, strategizing how we were going to put this virtual event together. So among of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about is also programming. So programming in the sense about which parts of our physical event do we take virtual? Which ones would work virtually? Which ones are probably not gonna make any sense? And can we introduce anything that's uniquely virtual with this opportunity? We had to determine how much time do you allocate? How do these sessions take place? We had to reimagine how the event would basically play out in a virtual setting, while considering that the psyche and behavior of delegates are evidently different online. People don't behave the same way physically and online. So even things like control mechanisms that we would normally facilitate to achieve desired attendee behavior also has to be reconsidered as well. So these were some of the things that that we've been discussing over the last few weeks. And evidently, I think how the entire experience comes together also depends on the technology provider that's going to be a major partner in this endeavor. So people like EventsAIR and Global Signing, they're doing, whatever they're coming up with is going to basically set that tone or set that experience about what delegates can expect to experience. Because of the extent of the capabilities and features. So while we may say that it's the same, but it's not exactly the same, different functionalities, different capabilities, they will all affect the way that the event plays out and determine the delegate's eventual experience.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, we have another poll coming up now. Lynette, can we bring that third poll up? Okay, good. So we have discussed earlier on the considerations that both Cheryl and Iain had to make in their organization's conversion to virtual platforms. Joe, can you talk about how technology can help address some of the key or rather critical aspects of a conference that still remains, even though it's online? So key aspects such as event promotion, registration, engagement, audience engagement. What can your solutions do about these KPIs?
I suppose an event management platform, as I sort of said before, has that workflow of everything from the event websites. This is where you start, where you might promote your event on a website. What we're finding out there is a lot more people are taking a lot more care in how their website looks to be more engaging, because really that's your window to the world, is your event website. So that's a starting point. And then as far as communications, that's sort of the next piece. So mailboxes are being flooded with emails about virtual events or webinars. So how do you stand out in your communication piece when you're actually promoting that event? So technology plays an important role there again. So having a good database in your event management platform to start with, and like a platform like EventsAIR has got a contact store where you have a profile of a user that you can say, okay, this person attended 6 events last year. That's a big tick, so for us to actually campaign and market that person for this type of event. So having that sort of intelligence around your attendee is an important part of how you would actually promote users to your event. So technology right now plays a very important role in that journey. So whether it be website, registration, when you actually get them into the site itself, security is probably the next big thing. So making sure that the site's secure, that they log in securely, and then the experience from there is also a secure experience. Some of the things that we'll be introducing in the product is the ability to have different levels of anonymity as well. So if you don't want to share things like email and phone numbers when you're in an online environment, you have the ability to switch those off. That's a really important aspect. So people feel confident that they can engage with other people and they're not sharing personal information. So that's the engagement piece to get those discussions happening. So the product itself has been designed around really looking at practical ways to run online events. So everything from the sessions, whether they be webinar or live streaming content, through to networking and discussion groups. So one of the modules that we have is the ability to set up groups of 4 or 5 people as a discussion group with a timer. So they have, let's say they have 5 minutes or 10 minutes to work in that group. And then after 10 minutes, they switch to another group. So it's a bit like speed dating, I suppose, But in that discussion group, they can do contact exchange, so exchange contact details, have a discussion, and then move on to the next one. So you can have multiples of those running throughout the event. So once again, technology plays an important role there. So the advantage that I suppose EventsAIR has is the history of managing software for events for a long time. So we've taken sort of key elements that make sense to put online that once again are practical to managing an event in one secure platform. And it's the delivery mechanism as well as far as what we're doing to make it easy to use. So a lot of people at the moment are running webinars like we are, but if we wanted to run a concurrent session next, or if we wanted to run a discussion group next or something else next, we'd have to click into a lot of different links and then make sure that we're logged into that. So that whole seamless experience needs to be there, and that's what everyone's going for is that seamless experience.
Yeah.
And the on-air product is really about giving that seamless experience to the user.
Okay. Now, sorry for the interruption here, Joe. So
That's
here we've
okay.
got the results, and you can see that audience engagement is coming up quite high on the list of concerns, and that is what we have also been discussing quite a bit about how we could we need to change the way we engage the audience and how technology can be used to improve on the engagement process. Yeah, okay. So sorry, Joe. Any more do you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, on the engagement piece, now a lot of the tools that you currently use in a live event, so live polling, live Q&A, gamification is definitely another area. So we have integrated gamification where if you join a session, for example, you might get points. You might run a trivia contest throughout it and get points, and those points could be redeemed for you to go to a virtual exhibitor and then redeem them for digital gifts, for example, is an idea. So I know, for example, Starbucks do a branded digital gift card. So an idea could be is based on gamification, you could get a digital gift card, you get coffee delivered to you is an idea, like as far as what is it that you could actually achieve. So it's a matter of really thinking outside the square with engagement and what you can achieve online.
Okay, okay. And Veemal, what are your thoughts?
All right, so I think we're seeing like the circling of some trends. Like if you look at, like we've been in the business like for now over a decade, so we've been doing event technologies, and we've been seeing that like probably I should say like over a decade ago, like one of the things that software companies used to say is that, hey, we are your one-stop solution provider, right? And then you go in there, that they provide you with everything else, and then but then they're neither too good at different pieces like registration, email marketing, and all that, right? And then we've gone through the phase of having really specialized tools, like being really good at what they do. And then from an events perspective, people really using these specialized tools. Like for example, you could be using MailChimp for your email marketing, and you could be using Slido for your engagement. I think we've come full circle now, because now is the time to have that one integrated solution platform, or even if you're not using one platform, but it should be a piece of technology, a platform that you're using that integrates the best of the breeds. And we are coming to that today, right? So in so much that we see, like, for example, there's this whole big thing about like digital event, online events. And as what we saw from the poll itself, right? The big question is really about engagement. Because I think for the rest of the processes, people already know how to get it done. Like you know how to get your online registration done, how to do your event promotion, and you probably already know the tools that are available to help you do that. If let's say you are not using some of those integrated tools, but maybe now is the time to look into that, right? And then so like for example, what's happening on our side is really like what we've been spending time on is really building that platform that helps you to do the event engagement, right? And we've been releasing a few versions already, so there's more things to come, and we call that as part of our product suite, that's called Give Me Live, right? So what we see in here is basically the need for people to be able to like I mentioned earlier, right? Once you register to a platform, you need to be able to now suddenly log in seamlessly to that platform. And I would say for the first time, right, especially with regards to digital event, you have the situation where you have what we call homogeneity in the way people will access your event. Because when you're doing a physical event, right, you need to take care of your check-in processes. So now some people will come in with their tickets. Some people will come in with their phone, with the QR code. Some people will not get the confirmation email. And you have to cater for all of this. But now to access a digital event, there's only one way to do that, right? And it's just probably using the tool that you are dictating. Like, for example, there's only one way to access this event, and that's just through GoToMeeting, right? So we've been going through the phase of, like, for example, there've already been these technologies out there, like, for example, mobile apps. But lots of organizers we've been seeing the challenges was adoption. So if you would hit like 50% adoption in terms of event app downloads, that would be considered good, right? But now, if let's say you have the same concept, the same, you piece together the same technologies, you suddenly have 100% adoption. If somebody didn't adopt one piece of your technology, then the person cannot even get on the event. So then I think that gives rise to a new breed of experience, right? And I think the next question is really about engagement itself. And I think engagement will have to go beyond technology itself. I think this whole thing about having the right tool, platforms, and all that, all the challenges that we are talking about today, we'll get over that very soon. In fact, you can see like the amount of learnings you've done yourself over the past week, right? And next week is going to be even more, right? And you can imagine what will happen next month, right? But I think with regards to online engagement, so that's where the whole rethinking is to be done. And I think that's the discovery we're on right now. Like, I attended an event and it was a great engagement example that I went through. It wasn't like, for example, hey, let's do a Q&A, right? But during a break, because now for a break, for a virtual event, it's difficult to say, hey, let's have a coffee break. Because guess what? Somebody could be joining you at midnight. You don't have a coffee break then, right? So that engagement during a break was like they got somebody to be able to write a song. And it wasn't technologically very advanced. It was just about using a Google Doc, right, that you share with the whole audience. So everybody just get on board that document, and then they just start writing a song, right? And then you got one person who's moderating the whole thing, and then she's coming up with the tunes. So basically at the end of 15 minutes, there's a whole song about the context, right? Which could be like a scientific thing, which is not really considered like sexy, I would say sometimes, right? But suddenly people are engaged. And these are the kind of engagement that it's impossible to have that in any other context than online, right? Because somebody will say, oh, but how do I access that? Where do I click? Or where do I? But now suddenly everybody is right there on their computer, on their phone, and it's just one link away, it's just one click away. And I think when we think along this line, right? So that's where we're going to think of what is it that should be transformed. And to me, that's what the new breed of online engagement should be about. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Veemal. I'm going to break away right now to Q&A because I'm seeing a lot of the good questions coming in from our audience. Thank you very much. There's one question I'd like us to tackle because it's very real. So Sabrina Xiao has asked, in the usual live event, people can see what they're paying for, the quality of the hotel, the quality of the food, the stage, the transportation, etc. But how will clients perceive the value of a virtual event and therefore justify how much they're going to pay in order to attend this event and how much the organizers can afford to charge? So I'm going to ask that to Iain because you are the organizer. So how do you balance that?
Very good question. So I believe it's we still got to put together a conference full of content, and on one hand, with us being a scientific-based conference, people are used to paying to present anyway. If you're presenting your latest research or your industry case study, many of our delegates are presenters as well. But if we look at the some of the other content as well, you know, a lot of the focus for our conference this year in Berlin was around sustainability. Suddenly that's no longer quite as relevant as you know, how do we get out of this this crisis, and then, you know, how do we move to the future? So what I was able to do was you know, go through my contact list and you know, look to see what sort of thought leaders could we get to get involved in the conference. And I'd initially thought about bringing 5 in. I've got 31 and counting now. But these are people, the likes of Gary Hamel, who's one of the you know, the leading leadership gurus for the last 20 years, is coming to speak at our event. And so it's putting together good content combined with the ability for people to make their presentations you know, in a scientific way. So, you know, people are paying for that. People are paying to, you know, to listen to people you talk about, you know, a lot of these gurus, I would say, gurus, a lot of these thought leaders, you know, if people say, well, just go on YouTube and listen to them. Well, what I've actually got them to do is talk about something that is unique to our conference, to talk about the theme of the conference, and to give some words of wisdom about how they feel that we can get out of this crisis. So to make it relevant content with really good speakers. You know, so that to me is key to all of this. We should never take our eye off that content ball, because that's what people are paying for. That's what people would pay for in a physical event as well. Yeah, we could do something in a nice hotel. We can have some great food, but actually a lot of it is around the content as well. If you can't keep people engaged physically, you've also got to keep people engaged virtually. So, you know, that's as important as anything else.
So you don't think the price point would change for the attendee fee?
Oh, sorry, absolutely, the price point changes. And actually what we've done, so our usual conference would cost around about 800 euros. And so what we looked at the price point for this event. Obviously, we don't have to pay for venues, we don't have to pay for coffee and dinners and everything. And we thought, well, you know, a fair amount would be less than half of that, 300 euros. But then we've also brought in this honor-based pricing. So what we've said to people is, look, you know, we're a not-for-profit association. If your budget is still okay, you can pay a little bit more. You can pay 400 euros. If you're struggling, but you still want to present, then you can pay 225 euros. And then if you want to come and listen, then you just pay 100. So we've got this honor-based pricing that we feel reflects the current situation. You know, some people are struggling, some people already have their budgets in place, and some people want to support us as as an organization. So we feel that's a really fair way of going forward. And in all of this, I think, you know, fairness is really key. You know, we know that people are struggling, and you know, we are as well. You know, we've tried to price things accordingly. We've said even to sponsors, you know, any of our sponsors for next year, then we're also going to acknowledge the fact that they're sponsors for this year as well. So, you know, they're getting 2 events for the price of 1, if you will.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Iain. Another set of questions that have come up frequently is that venues have emerged the biggest loser in this pandemic because live physical events are not happening. So how can venues prepare themselves for future events should the hybrid model actually stick? Perhaps Cheryl can give us your views, because you're now doing both virtual and physical, and going forward you're saying that the hybrid model may stay around for a while.
Sorry, could you repeat the first part? I lost you a little bit in the connection.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so venues are asking how can they remain competitive even when things start to recover and the hybrid model stays around for a while. How can they bring value to event organizers? What kind of value add can they bring to event organizers, basically? What will you be looking for?
So I think that's an interesting question, because you know, increasingly when physical events do take place, like we mentioned before, and hybrids may come on board, I think the capabilities of the venue in order to facilitate this kind of hybrid functions will become one of the key considerations. Also the experience in them being able to do and organize something like that. Because even at this time, different venues, some venues, for example, they still charge for Wi-Fi, right? Not every venue provides the organizer with complimentary Wi-Fi. And because of that, having to know that a venue is able to support the kind of arrangements that you want to do with a hybrid arrangement, whether it's actually even with a physical event, now moving on to hybrid, if they can support that, I think that becomes very, very compelling. Previously, we talked about whether a venue space, how flexible are they able to adjust or adapt to an idea that you may want to facilitate, to create that event experience. Some venues obviously can do that better than others. So I think this is something, or the time when venues also knowing that a lot of event organizers, delegates are also moving towards that virtual. It's inevitable that they will also have to look and see their infrastructure and their service support, the team's technical know-how, to be able to give that support. I think one area that we would find very valuable would be insights or ideas that comes from the venue about helping us to think about what we can do with their venue space, like showing or showcasing why would we choose that venue over another another place, that because in a venue it's just four walls, it's an empty space, but that soft skill, that ability to help organizers to conceptualize what they could possibly maybe not even imagine at this point, but they can work together with us in order to achieve that.
Okay. Veemal, do you foresee global signing coming into some kind of partnership with physical venues in the future, so that they can tap on your know-how, the technology know-how, to provide that level of support to event organizers?
Yeah, that's bound to happen. That's bound to happen. And I think hybrid events will be happening. That's for sure. I think there's no doubt about that in the near future. Now, whether it continues happening a year after that, that's the next question, but it will happen. Why? Is because different parts of the world will be coming out of confinement, of lockdowns at different points in time. People will still be wary of traveling. If, let's say, there's a great conference happening in Manchester, like, my family will ask me, do you really need to go there, right? Or if you need to join at night, do that for the safety of our family, and I will probably do that, right? And I think that will be how people will think about for some time to come before they start traveling. So there's no running away from that. Hybrid will be the way for the very near future, and I would say probably for around a year or so. So definitely, then venues need to be able to equip themselves, not just with the relevant hardware, but with the capabilities, with the people, with the right partners, right? Because we are suddenly finding ourselves, like, for example, hey, who does what? Like earlier I mentioned about the concept of digital event manager. I mean, it's just a nice name, I think, right? But what is that really? What is the digital event manager does? Who's that digital event manager? Is that a tech company? Is that an event company? Is that somebody in between? Or maybe like what kind of? So I think that's still being defined right now. And yes, at least on our side, we're looking at working with venues to help them equip with that. And I think the next thing is I think business is going to come back for the venues, because once the whole once event starts coming back, in fact, it's going to be just such a crunch to get your relevant bookings at the events, because everything that's getting postponed is just being pushed, and there's just going to be that crunch. So now is the time to start gearing up, getting prepared with the relevant solutions, so that, let's say, things can be done efficiently and faster. Yeah.
And on that point, just quickly,
Joe,
venues are booking up way in advance now, so it's even more of a reason to go hybrid and virtual, because what's happening is the events are being postponed, so they're now, instead of 6 months ahead, it's a year ahead that they have to book. So they need a solution as an interim. So hybrid is definitely, I agree, the way it's going to go.
Good point, Joe. Thank you so much. Yeah, 1 hour is really very short. I mean, on paper, it seems like a long time, 60 minutes, but you know how fast we go through our questions. There are so many questions from the audience that we have not been able to tackle. A lot of questions coming up on how sponsors should rethink what they can get out of the money, and also how event organizers can also change the mindset of sponsors. Now, what I can say to the audience is that thank you very much for your questions. These will give us inspiration for future TTG conversations webinars, because a lot of the questions alone is a good topic on itself. Yeah. So thank you so much to our panelists. We have just one last poll. Lynette, can you bring that up? Yes, just very quickly. I just want to see whether things have changed after this session. Now, bearing in mind in the beginning, a lot of you were happy with the virtual events. 55% of you said you were happy with organizing virtual events. So let's see how things have changed. All right, good. Okay, so
we have less number of undecided people now.
yeah, that's a good
That's
thing.
interesting.
That's a good thing. Yeah. I'm glad we have been able to change your mindset a little there. Yeah. So thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. You've been a great audience. We will be sending the compilation of questions to Joe, to Veemal, to Iain, and Cheryl also, so that they can also look at how they could possibly address needs in the marketplace. And we will have details on our next webinar soon, after we were able to discuss this internally. And thank you once again to Joe, to Veemal, to Iain, and to Cheryl for joining us from where you are. Meanwhile, everyone, take care, stay healthy, yeah, and we see you in the next session. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.